Hare Krishna. So, welcome everyone on our Tuesday evening discussion on Bhagavad Gita. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinim Paramanandamadhavam Shri Chaitanyeshwaram Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. Once again, welcome everyone. So last week we were discussing text number 6 through 12 we discussed, and the content was how to perform karma yoga while living in this world. So Krishna speaks about that one should stay in the mood of detachment, and in that spirit one should perform all his activity, mentally renouncing the result of one's activity. So offering everything to Lord, our action with word, senses, and mind. So the purpose of work in this material world is working without attachment, but working for purification. So that was the content we discussed last time. Now, text 13 onwards, we are moving into the next section of this chapter where Lord Krishna is speaking about now who is really the doer. Okay, as again going back to the acronym of this chapter. To remember this chapter, we use the acronym STEP, STEP. So first section talks about S means staying within this world, living in this world, doing your duties, but without attachment for the purpose of purification. Now, second section of this chapter is T, means the three doers. So who is really the doer? Who are the different doers involved in any activity? So we are starting with text number 13. Sarvakarmani manasa sannyasasте sukham vasi Navadvare pure dehi nevam kurvan nakarayan. So the translation paraphrase to kind of explain it simply, the embodied being who are self-controlled and mentally detached from actions. So sarva karmani manasa sannyasate, who are mentally detached from the action, and nevam kurvan nakarayan, they are free from the thought that they are the doer or the cause of anything. Okay, so nevam kurvan na karayan. So these people, what is the result they attain? Navadware pure dehi sukham vasi. So they live happily in the city of 9 gates. So the person who is self-controlled and mentally detached from all the actions. So even though physically engaging in the action, but mentally detached means not thinking about the result of one's activity, not attached to the results. Giving up the thought that I am the doer or I am the cause of anything. So that person resides happily in the city of 9 gates. So what is the city of 9 gates? This body is described here as the city of 9 gates. And the soul, the living entity who is residing within this body, is like the king of the city. So whose administration is carried out by the ministry of ego, intelligence, mind, senses, and the pranavayu, the life air. And the rule of the soul over this body continues until the time in the form of death snatches away everything. Okay, so this body itself is like the city of nine gates. Now, like a city has different doors, right? Different gates for entry and exit. So for the people to interact with the world, the city has different entry and exit points. So same way, the body has gates to interact with the external world. So what are these nine gates in the body? Two eyes, two nostrils, two ears, one mouth, anus, and genital. So these are the nine gates in the body for interacting with the external world. Now, just as every well protected city will not allow anything and everybody to come inside, so same way we need to regulate what is coming inside the body and what is going outside of us to kind of stay protected. That's why it says self-controlled. The living entity who is self-controlled and mentally detached from the actions lives peacefully, lives happily in this city of nine gates. So the word used here is Navadware Pure Dehi. And the context which is Lord Krishna is describing here actually is coming from Bhagavatam. In Bhagavatam, there is a one very beautiful story is described, the story of Puranjan. How many of you have heard the story of Puranjan? Okay, just one person. Okay, so we have described the story of Puranjan few times. I will briefly mention the story of Puranjan here. The story of Puranjan is described by Narad Muni to King Parachina Bharishat. So the story is kind of an allegorical story. It's not as a true event, but Narad Muni, to convey a message to King Prachina Bharishat, he tells this story. Because King Prachina Bharishat, he was engaged in performing many Karma Kanda Yajna for attaining material benefit within this world. And in that way, he's performing many yajnas, many sacrifices, giving animal sacrifices. So Narad Muni, to bring him to the right understanding, he tells about a story. Narad Muni starts with, there were two friends by the name Puranjan and Abhigyath. So these two friends, very close friends, always living together. And once they were roaming around and they reached at one place, Puranjan said, "You stay here." He told his friend Abhigyath, "You stay here and I will continue my journey and search for the object of happiness." So Puranjan continued and he came on the outskirts of a city, very beautiful city with nine gates. And as he reached there, this Navadwarapuri, the city of nine gates, he saw one very beautiful princess coming out of the city. And that princess was carrying an umbrella, was there was an umbrella on her head with a five-hooded snake. And there were 10 different bodyguards and many other soldiers who were protecting that princess. And the king was very attracted, this Puranjan was very attracted to this princess, and he approached the princess. This princess is also attracted to Puranjan. They both talk and they discuss that we want to get married to each other and we want to continue living happily in the city of nine gates, Navadwarapuri. So they both agree to live with each other and they enter into the city of nine gates and start living happily as a husband wife together. Now, as they are living, there was another woman named Durbhagi, the misfortunate one. She was also looking for a suitable husband, wanted to marry somebody, but nobody is willing to marry her. She is not good looking, not very beautiful. So she is searching out for a person to get married to. And once she approaches a person, another Yavana king called Chandaveg, and asks him to marry her. And he tells her, "You are already 85 years old. Why you want to get married? I will keep you with me. I will give you protection. And here are my brother Parajwara and my another very important money soldier called Bhayam. You can go with Parajwara and Bhayam anywhere and plunder anywhere, wherever you want. So this Durabhagi, along with Parajwara and Bhayam, she attacks on many different places, many different cities, and destroy everything. And once she happens to attack on this Navadwarapuri, where Puranjan is living happily with Puranjani, with his wife, and trying to enjoy in that city of nine gates, she enters with the Bhayam and Parajwara, and they destroy the 10 bodyguards of this princess. They destroy the five-hooded um, serpent snake also. That snake also was the as a personal kind of a bodyguard or the umbrella for the princess, and they harass all the different other servants also. And finally, this Durbhagi enters into the palace and forcibly embraces Puranjana. And he is seeing Puranjani is also in a dead situation, not responding. All the bodyguards, all the other soldiers or the servants are also in a dead condition, not responding. So he is lamenting, and finally he gives up his life because he was too attached to Puranjani, to his wife. In next life, he takes birth as a woman. Now, in the form of a woman, she is married to another person, another king, and give birth to many children. And once they Puranjani, who or Puranjan, who was born as a woman in the next life, along with her husband, they go to the forest, and there her husband dies, and she is now lamenting, trying to do the funeral, and she also wants to enter into that funeral fire, thinking, I will give up my life. And as she is ready to enter into the funeral fire, Brahmana comes there and he stops. Wait, stop. See, in the previous life, you were a man and you died while thinking of your wife, and you took birth as a woman in this life. Now, in this life, you are dying thinking of your husband. Again, you will appear as a man, because the principle of Bhagavad Gita is yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Whatever you remember at the time of death, that state you attain. A person remembering a woman will appear as a woman. A woman remembering a man will appear as a man in the next life. So this cycle is going on and on and on. And see, remember, in previous life you had one friend, and that friend is still waiting for you. You need to approach, you need to get united to your old friend. And then this person, this Brahmana, stops her to commit this um, suicide in the form of entering into the funeral fire, and then tells her, I am that friend. I am that friend Abhigyat, and you were Puranjan in your previous life. So Narad Muni, like that, he told this story to Prachina Bharishad. And Prachina Bharishad is scratching his head. Okay, why are you telling me this story? What does this story really mean? So Narad Muni now gives the context of this story. He tells what this Puranjan, who this Puranjan is, who Abhigyat is, and what all these different people in this story represent. He said the Puranjan is nothing but the living entity. Every living entity, we are the Puranjan. And the Supreme Lord, he is Avigyat. He is the friend of the living entity who is always accompanying the living entity. And the living entity, he comes into this material world and get attracted by different bodily forms. So we accept one particular body, and this body is Navadwarapuri, the city of nine gates. So the living entity resides within this body, and resides with whom? This princess, which is coming out of the city of nine gate, is represented as the material intelligence, the buddhi, bhotik buddhi. And the five-headed snake as an umbrella is the five type of life air, the pranavayu. And it has 11 bodyguards. 11 bodyguards are our five karmendriya, five jnanendriya, and the mind. So these are the 11 bodyguards. And then there are lots of other soldiers and servants who are accompanying this princess. These are the various thoughts, because in the mind, there are so many thoughts going on continuously. So the living entity is residing within this body, Navadwarapuri, along with the intelligence, the mind, with having all these soldiers or the bodyguards as in the form of our different senses, karmendriya, jnanendriya. And while the living entity is trying to live happily in this body, there will be so many different attacks of various forces. The biggest one is the time factor. Time factor doesn't leave anybody. So this Durbhagi represents Jara, the old age. And she is protected by Chandaveg. Chandaveg is Kal. Kal does not spare anybody. The time factor does not spare anybody. With time, the old age comes. Nobody wants to embrace the old age, but the old age comes and forcibly embraces everybody. So Durbhagi, who came and forcibly embrace Puranjana. This is the Jara, the old age which comes to everybody. And as the old age come, the person's life here is weakened, his intelligence is weakened, all the senses gets weakened, nothing functions. And with the old age, now at the time of death, what comes is Parajwara, which is fever, and Bhayam, fear. Everybody is uh, at the time of death, the body temperature rises, the person is filled with so much fear, and ultimately one gives up his body, leaves the city of nine gates. And whatever state one remembers at that time, he will enter into that particular life form in the next life, as Puranjan became a woman in the next life. So that is the city of nine gates here, explained with this allegorical story by Narada Muni to King Parachina Bharishat. So same with Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is describing this point that yes, every living entity is living in the city of nine gates. The nine gates are all these different limbs which we discussed. And in the material consciousness, the soul residing within this body identifies himself with the city of nine gates. Right? I am a man, I'm a woman, somebody is in the form of a dog or a hog or a mosquito, whatever the form is. One starts to identify with that body. But within that body also lives the Supreme Lord as Super Soul, who is the controller of all the living entities in this world. So when the soul establishes its connection with the Lord, then it becomes free, like the Supreme Lord, even though while residing within this body. So in this verse, Lord Krishna is declaring that embodied soul is neither the doer nor the cause of anything. Then the question comes, okay, if the living entity is not the doer or the cause of anything, then whether God is the actual cause of the actions within this world. Right? Many people claim that, oh, I did not do this. God made me do this. God made me like this, so I acted in that way. So if the living entity is not the doer, is God the doer then? So in the next verses, Lord Krishna explained what is the principle, who is the doer. And when the Lord is saying the living entity is not the doer, the point to understand is living entity is not the only doer. There are multiple doers engaged in any action. So in the next verse, Lord Krishna explains, text number 14. न कृतत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफल संयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते. The embodied soul, the master of the city of nine gates, master of the city of this body, does not have the sense of doership or the proprietorship, does not cause activity, nor does he create the fruit of action. All this is enacted by nature, acquired from the contact with the modes of material nature. Sabhavastu pravartate. Everything, whatever is happening, that is happening because of the particular nature acquired when we come in contact with this material nature of three modes. So here, Lord Krishna is saying, na kritatvam. The living entity does not have the sense of doership. Na karmani. He does not cause any activities. Na karmafala sanyogam. The living entity does not create the fruits of one's action. So na kartatvam, na karmani, na karmafala sanyogam. So how is everything happening then? All this is happening by swabhava. Swabhavastu pravartate. So by one's nature being in contact with the modes of nature. For example, if somebody is in the body of a dog, right? Every body causes a particular swabhav. The person, the living entity, when it enters into a particular body, is forced to act in that particular way. Somebody is in the form of a hog, right? In the body of a hog, it's forced to act in that way. The hog just lives in some filthy place or eating garbage, eating stool. Even if somebody comes and put a very nice plate of prasadam in front of hog, nice halwa in front of hog, not going to eat that, because the swabhav acquired because of a particular body is different. And when we acquire a human body also, again, the swabhav is different based on the different modes of material nature. Somebody is in the mode of passion, ignorance, goodness, and person is going to act in that particular way. Somebody is influenced by mode of goodness. He wants to be close to the nature, acquiring knowledge, reading, and in that way he feels connection with the nature. Somebody more in the mode of passion, they are just get goer, right? They want to get things done, accomplish something, name, fame. And somebody in the mode of ignorance, they just lying around and wasting their time drinking and smoking and all these things. So that is completely mode of ignorance. So by particular nature one has acquired by coming in contact with the material nature, in that way one acts in that particular way. Now the living entity here Prabhupada is describing in the purport that the living entity is in the midst of the material ocean, struggling for existence. And the waves of the ocean are tossing him around. He has no control over them. Just like a swimmer is there in the ocean, and the person just floating around in the ocean is tossed by the waves of the ocean here and there. He has no control over them. His best solution is to get out of the water. If he takes shelter of a boat, the same way we are within this material world, which is considered as Bhavasagar, and the best solution to come out of this Bhavasagar is by accepting the boat of transcendental Krishna consciousness. And that alone will save one from all the miseries of this material existence. So in the 14th text, Krishna is saying the living entity is actually not the doer. He does not create the result also. Ultimately, one is acting forced by one's nature, right? That's where the question comes. Okay, if I am working as per my nature, but Krishna made me like that, and I'm forced to work in that way. So how I am responsible for my actions? Why should I face the consequences? If I do something wrong, if I commit any mistake, commit any sin, why should I suffer? Because I was just forced to act in that way out of my swabhav. Now, in the next text, Lord Krishna explained who is the doer, what are the different doers. Nadate kaschit papam nacheva sukritam vibhu अज्ञानेर अवरतम ज्ञानम तेन मुह्यति जानवतः जानतवः. So nadate kaschit papam na cheva sukritam vibhu. So who is behind any action if not the living entity? Is it the material nature? Because material nature, by the contact with material nature, we are getting particular sabhav or a particular body. So is the material nature the doer? And then ultimately material nature is under the control of the Lord. Because Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, right? Maya adhyakshena prakriti. This material nature is working under my direction. So directly, indirectly, doesn't it mean that Lord is responsible for everything then? Right? Not the living entity. So here Lord Krishna says, nor he to nullify this argument, Lord Krishna answers, nor does the Supreme Lord assumes one's sinful or pious activities. Nadate kaschit papam na cheva sukritam vibhu. Vibhu. Vibhu means the Supreme Lord. So the Supreme Lord does not take responsibility or take credit of anybody's sinful or pious activities. Embodied being, however, bewildered because of ignorance, which covers their real knowledge. He is responsible for his actions. So who is the karta if the soul is not the doer? If soul is not the doer, then whose reaction the soul is getting? And if soul is not the doer, then what are all the instructions of the scriptures meant for? Because the instructions of the scriptures are meant for that, oh, you should not act in this way, you should not act in that way, so many rules and regulation. But if soul is not the doer, then for whom these instructions are meant for? So who is the karta? Now let's discuss this with few examples. Ultimately, I will tell you there are three doers. Okay, the scriptures explain, Bhagavad Gita is explaining even in the uh, 13th chapter, which will talk about the field, that the knower of the field and the owner of the field. So it will talk about who is the actual doer. So in nutshell, there are three doers behind every action: Jeev, Jagat, Jagdish. Okay, remember in that way. Jeev, 3J. Jeev, Jagat, Jagdish. So what are these three doers? The living entity, the material nature, and the Supreme Lord. So understand it with this example. If a tree is cut, now to cut that tree, the axe is an instrument, but the person who is holding that axe and attacking on the tree, he is also the doer. So if the tree is cut, who is responsible? Is the axe responsible? Is axe the doer only? Or the person who is holding on to that axe, he is the doer? So axe is also the doer, the living entity is also the doer. Living entity, the woodcutter in this example, is the initiating cause. The axe is the instrumental cause. And for the action in this world, the Prakriti is the instrumental cause, and the living entity Jiva is the initiating cause. So these two cause explained here. The material nature is the instrumental cause. It facilitates. This body is given by the material nature, and by utilizing this body, the living entity is performing various action. So yes, this material nature is the instrumental cause. The living entity is the initiating cause. Another example to understand is, if a thief is committing a crime, he made a theft and he's caught by the police. Now the police has brought him in front of the judge, and the judge gives him the sentence. So criminal is put into prison, put into the jail. So who is the doer? Is police the cause by for putting him behind the jail? Is the judge the cause for putting him behind the jail? Or the criminal himself is the cause for putting him behind the jail? So we should understand the thief himself, the criminal, he is the initiating cause. He initiated it by committing the crime. The police is the instrumental cause, and judge is the sanctioning cause. So here, the third cause introduced in this example. So there is initiating cause, the criminal himself by committing the crime. Then the police becomes as an intermediate, as an instrumental cause for sending him to the prison. And judge is the sanctioning cause. He, listening to all the statements, all the arguments, all the witnesses, the judge gives him the sentence that this person need to be sent to jail for these many years, and all this uh, punishment to be given, all this fine to be imposed on him. So same way we should understand, if a soul is suffering, if a living entity is suffering in this material world, who is the cause behind it? Or even is enjoying, if the living entity is enjoying, who is the cause behind it? So for every action, there are three causes, three doers. The soul, the living entity itself, is the initiating cause. The material nature is the instrumental cause, and the Supreme Lord is the sanctioning cause. every action starts from the living entity. Why? Because the living entity is making a particular desire to do particular activity, and the material nature is facilitating in the form of this body or the various facilities, various resources in this world. So the material nature is the instrumental cause, and the supreme lord living in the heart of every living entity, he knows everything. He knows the desire of every minute living entity, also to the mosquito, to the ant. He knows the desire of every living entity, and the supreme lord is the sanctioning cause. So it starts with ignorance, which leads to the desire to enjoy in a particular way, which brings in the bondage. And the Lord sanctions the desire as one deserves. Okay, again, it's not that the Lord sanctions each and everything. Lord sanctions the desire of the living entity as one deserves. So God's work in this regard is threefold here. He provides the soul with the power to act, and once one has performed the action, whatever power is supplied to us based on that, whenever action has been performed, Lord is noting down our actions. Updrishta anumanta cha, right? He is the witness. He is noting down all our action. So first he gives us the ability to do, then he is noting down all our action. He is taking account of everything. And then third activity Lord does is he gives us the result of our action. He gives us the result of our karma. So these are the three activity which Lord is doing. He is sanctioning our desires based on what we deserve. And in the purport, everybody should read the purport in detail here. I'm just going to mention few things out of the purport, but the purport of this verse is very nice, very important. So please read the whole purport in your time. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the Lord fulfills the desire of the living entity as he deserves. Man proposes and God disposes. The individual is not therefore omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires. So the Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not omnipotent. Lord is Vibhu, but we are Anu. But the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with the desire of the minute independent living entity. So, however, when one desires Krishna, then the Lord takes special care and he encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and attain eternal happiness. So the individual soul has the freedom to perform good or bad action by the exercise of its own free will. So we can just consider here, taking the analogy of a cricket match also. So God's work is just like that of an umpire in the cricket match, right? He just keeps account of the scores of both teams, and when somebody is hitting a 4 or 6, he or the batsman is out, or the bowler is throwing a no ball or white ball, he is just giving uh, the result of that. Umpire cannot be blamed of his decision. It was based upon the way the player performed, right? So same way, God is not responsible for our actions or the result of our actions. He is just awarding the result based on how the living entity is performing the action. Now the question may come here. Okay, so if the living entity is performing based on one's free will, then why did God allow him to act in that free will? Why did God did not stop him to act in that way? Why did the God grant free will to the soul? So it is because the soul is a tiny part and parcel of the Lord, and it possesses all the qualities in a minute way. The Lord is Avigyat Swarat, right? First verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Avigyat Swarat means he's supremely independent. So the soul also possesses that quality in a minute way. The living entity is also independent, but minutely. He has a very tiny free will, tiny independence, and the living entity utilizes his intelligence. his senses, mind, intellect in a manner in which it want to act. And the Lord awards that free will because without free will, there cannot be love. God wants us, God wants the living entity to develop love for him. But at the same time, God does not want to force the living entity to love him. God has avoided that free will. If the living entity want to turn away from God, yes, you have your free will. But if the living entity want to develop love for God, yes, you have that free will, and the Lord facilitates both ways. But if the living entity develops that desire to love God, to move towards God, then God takes special interest, right? Because it says you move one step towards Lord, and Lord moves 10 steps towards you. And the Lord's steps are huge. Lord's steps are not like us. In one step, he measured the whole universe. Right? In one step, in the pastime of Vaman Dev with the King Bali Maharaj, in one step, he measured the whole earth. And then in one step, he measured the whole universe. So Lord's step is huge. That's why I say you take one step towards Lord, Lord is willing to take 10 steps towards you. But nonetheless, the Lord has awarded us the free will. Whatever we want to act in that way, and Lord facilitates based on what we deserve. So we use our free will, we exercise our free will in good and bad deeds. So one should not blame the Lord for his action at all. Lord made me do like this. Every action starts with one's own desire to act in a particular way. So what are the three doers in this? Anybody will like to summarize here? The three doers involved.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. The three doers are Jeev, Jagat, and
Jagadish.
Jagadish.
Yes, Jeev, Jagat, and Jagadish. The living entity, the material nature, and the Supreme Lord. So, living entity is initiating cause, material nature is instrumental cause, and the Supreme Lord is sanctioning cause. So, every action happens because of the desire of living entity. Now, text number 16. ज्ञानेन तु तद् अज्ञानं येषां नासितम् आत्मनः तेषाम् आदित्यवज् ज्ञानं प्रकाश्यति तत्परम्. When, however, one is enlightened with knowledge, by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So here says, when somebody comes to the real knowledge, gets that enlightenment, then all his ignorance is destroyed, and the knowledge reveals everything. In Bhagavad Gita, later on, Lord Krishna is going to describe Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. So after passing through many, many lifetimes, many, many births, when one is in perfect knowledge, then one surrenders to the Supreme Lord. Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvam Iti Samahatma Sudurlava. So after many, many lifetimes, when comes in knowledge, he understands, yes, Supreme Lord Vasudeva Krishna, he is the Supreme Lord. And then one surrenders unto him. And when one attains Krishna consciousness, then everything is revealed to him. As everything is revealed by the sun in the daytime. So another statement is, Krishna Surya Saman Maya hai andhakar. Jaha Krishna taha nahi Maya radhikar. And the Lord is like the sun, and Maya is like ignorance, darkness. And when Lord Krishna appears, the sun in the form of Krishna appears, then the Maya is removed. Maya cannot stay at that place. So one may come to this understanding that I am not the body, I am the spirit soul, I am the soul. But that just understanding that theoretically is not enough. one need to know the difference in soul and super soul also. And many people, by Sankhya Yoga, by the analytical study of the material elements, the 24 elements, they come to this understanding that, okay, yes, we are not the body, there are all these different elements, and I'm the spirit soul. But not remaining at the level of soul. Ultimately, one need to go beyond that. Yes, beyond the soul, there is super soul, who is the controller of everything, who is the proprietor of everything, and knowing the difference between the soul and super soul also. The living entity is bewildered in so many ways. Okay? And the biggest influence or biggest ignorance is when the living entity starts to think himself as God. That I am God. So in that way, he falls into the last snare of Maya. Prabhupada writes in the purport somewhere that he actually falls into the last snare of nescience, thinking himself to be God. Because if living entity is God, then how can he become bewildered by nescience? If he is God, how can he come under the influence of Maya? Because if he is coming under the influence of Maya, it means Maya is bigger than God. Then Maya is greater than God. This ignorance, this nescience is greater than God. So if somebody is thinking himself to be God, that is the biggest ignorance, the biggest influence of ignorance here. So Krishna says when this ignorance is gone, then one is enlightened and his knowledge reveals everything. So we need to act as per the directions of the Supreme Lord. Text number 17. Tad buddhayas tad atmanas tan nishtha tat parayanah gachanti apunar avritim jnana niruddhita kalmashah. So when one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, tad buddhaya means whose intelligence is engaged in the Supreme, tad atmanas whose mind is engaged in the Supreme, tan nishtha whose nishtha, the strong faith, is engaged in the Supreme Lord, tat parayana, and who has completely taken shelter of the Supreme Lord. So somebody who has engaged his intelligence, mind, faith, his refuge in the Supreme Lord, he is cleansed of all the misgivings through the complete knowledge, and thus he proceeds straight on the path of liberation. So this is very important verse here. Lord Krishna is concluding on the concept of these three doers, that understanding who is behind everything, who is the controller, proprietor of everything, and taking shelter of that Supreme Lord, then one becomes free from the bondage in this material world. So Tat Parayana means one who has taken complete shelter of the Lord. And there are 6 stages or the 6 different ways of taking shelter of the Lord. What are those 6 different ways of surrender? Anukulasya sankalpa, pratikulasya varjanam, rakshashiti iti vishwaso, gopatritve varnam tatha, atma nikshepa karpanye, shadvida sharanagati. So these are the 6 divisions of surrender. And anukulasa sankalpa means accepting those things which are favorable for our devotional service. So taking sankalpa of doing those activity which are favorable for our progress in Krishna consciousness. Pratikulasya varjanam, and taking sankalpa of not doing those things which are unfavorable, which can take us away from devotional service. Rakshashati iti vishwaso, having that strong faith that Krishna will protect me. Gopatritve varnam tatha, he is the provider. Krishna will provide me whatever I need. Atma nikshepa, except having that full surrender, and karpanye, that humility. So these are the 6 limbs or the 6 divisions of surrender unto the Supreme Lord. So the word used here is nishtha. there is difference in Shraddha and Nishtha. Okay, I'm focusing on this particular word here. Lord Krishna said, Tan Nishtha Tat Parayana. Who has that strong faith, Nishtha? So the 9 different stages of progress in spiritual life starts with Adau Shraddha, then Sadhu Sangha, Bhajan Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, then Nishtha, right? Then it comes to the stage of Nishtha. There is a difference in Shraddha and Nishtha. Can somebody describe the difference in Shraddha and Nishtha?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Shraddha is a like initial stage of faith, is where the faith is little tender, and Nishtha is a strong and condensed faith.
Yes. So Shraddha is the beginning faith, as a very tender faith. Somebody has some Shraddha in their heart, right? Somebody has Shraddha in our dharma, in our culture, in our religion. So with that little tender faith, then one comes in association of devotees. But ultimately, Nishtha is the condensed faith, a very strong faith. The Shraddha can be very flickering. जैसे बोलते हैं ना, ये तुम्हारी श्रद्धा है. So Shraddha, somebody may have Shraddha in a particular Devi, particular Devata, particular spiritual person as a guru or somebody. In the beginning, they have little Shraddha in them. But later on, they may develop Shraddha for somebody else. Their Shraddha may change. आज इस देवता में, इस देवी में श्रद्धा है, कल किसी में श्रद्धा हो सकती है. So the Shraddha keep changing. That flickering faith, the tender faith can change. Nishtha means it is very strong. No matter what, that Nishtha is not shaken. Even somebody hears, somebody criticizes one's spiritual authority, but the person has so strong Nishtha, he is not shaken up by listening to some criticism or some other blasphemy also. So that is Nishtha. And when we are living within this material world, we are given with mind and intelligence. So there are two things Lord has given to us, dil or dimag, right? We have been given with our mind, intellect, and we are given with heart also, dil. So dil or dimag, two different things. And what we are supposed to do is we should engage our mind and intellect to understand this material world, how this material world is functioning. And we need to engage our heart in the Supreme Lord. दिमाग संसार में लगाना चाहिए, इस संसार को समझने के लिए, और दिल लगाना चाहिए भगवान के लिए. But in this material world, we do opposite. We give our heart to this world and we utilize our mind and intellect to understand the Supreme Lord. Right? We do opposite. दिल लगा देते हैं इस संसार के अंदर और दिमाग से भगवान को समझने का प्रयत्न करते हैं. Why did God do like this? भगवान ने ऐसा क्यों किया, वैसा क्यों किया? So we analyze and kind of try to understand in so many different ways, speculating and analyzing so many different things. But Lord is saying, give your heart to me and give your mind to this world. Try to understand this world through your mind and intellect. There is another very beautiful pastime, because why it is mentioned like that, Lord is saying whatever is kept in the heart, that stays very strongly, but whatever is kept in the mind, that goes away. So keep me in your heart and keep the world in your mind, in your head. There was a pastime when Lord Shiva is asked to marry Parvati Devi, and Lord Shiva does not want to marry Parvati. And finally, Lord Vishnu appears in front of Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu then kind of instructs Lord Shiva that it is my desire that you marry Parvati. I want you to marry Parvati. And finally, Lord Shiva accepts. And Lord Shiva's answer was, Aapki agya sar par. I will keep your order on my head, and then I will act out what you want. And then Lord interrupted. Lord said, Don't keep my order on your head. Keep my order in your heart. जो मेरी आज्ञा है उसको अपने दिल में रखो, not अपने दिमाग पे. Why? Because whatever is kept on the head, it can be washed away very quickly. It can go away very soon. But whatever is kept in the heart, that stays. That stays for longer. Just we can see our experiences in this world. Whatever you take to your heart, you will keep that for so long in your heart. But whatever was in your mind, we may forget that also. For example, Prabhuji is going to work and Mataji in the morning tells, okay, in the evening while coming back from office, from the store, bring these things. I need atta, I need chawal, I need sugar, I need lemon, ginger, this, that. So bring these things. And the husband may say, Prabhuji may say, okay, I will remember. I have kept in my mind, I will remember. So in the evening goes to the store and bring some things and maybe forget few other things. And what is the answer when the wife say, oh, you forgot this thing? Arey, ye to dimag se nikal gaya. I forgot about this. Ye to dimag se nikal gaya. So whatever is kept in our mind, it can quickly be forgotten. But whatever is kept in the heart, that stays for longer. For example, if somebody spoke harshly to us, somebody criticized us, spoke some very strong, harsh words to us, we take those words to our heart. And when somebody tells us, "Arey, forget it, whatever happened, let it go." And what do people? Most people say, "Arey, Prabhu ji, कैसे भुला दें? How can we let it go? ये तो दिल में लग गया, ये तो दिल में चुभ गया. How can we let it go?" So whatever is in the heart, that stays for longer. But whatever is in the mind, it can go away quickly. It can wash away. So the Lord is telling, keep me in your heart and engage your mind to understand this material world. And in that way, one is not bound and one can become free from all the bondage and move to the path of liberation. So one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge, all fixed in the Supreme, one is cleansed of all the misgivings through this complete knowledge. So these are the verses on understanding who is the real doer. And then text 18 onwards, Lord Krishna is moving to the next section, which is equal vision. So understanding who is the doer, now in that way develop that equal vision. So whatever Lord Krishna mentioned in text 17, these four facilities, intelligence, mind, faith, and our goal should be Krishna. So these four facilities are mentioned when these are centered on Krishna. When our mind, intelligence, faith, refuge are centered on Krishna, what is the result of that? Then one develops equal vision towards all living entities. So text 18 is very, very important, and everybody should try to memorize this verse. Okay. विद्या विनय संपन्ने ब्राह्मणे गविहस्तिनि शुनि चैव श्वपाके च पंडित समदर्शिनः. So somebody who is really learned, he sees a cow, a tiger, a dog eater, or a pandita or a brahmana to be equal. So Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, somebody who is equipped with knowledge and humility. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. Brahmane Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Shwapake Cha Pandita Samadarshana. Such a learned person who is equipped with knowledge and humility. He sees a Brahmana, a cow, a elephant, a dog eater, with all to be equal. Okay, so two very important qualities: the right knowledge and humility. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. Because when somebody is in knowledge, then he develops humility also. Vidya Dadhati Vinaya. When somebody is in knowledge, then he develops that humility also. As a tree, when the tree is laden with the fruits, the tree bends down, the branches of the tree bends down. So same way, when somebody is equipped with right knowledge, that person becomes humble automatically. So here, what does equal vision really mean? Does it mean behaving equally with everybody? So in this verse, many different entities are listed: cow, elephant, tiger, dog, dog eater. So what does equal vision really mean? Does it mean that, okay, I come in front of the tiger, behave with the tiger also same way, the way you will behave with the Brahmana, touching the feet of the Brahmana or embracing the tiger here? So it does not mean that in behavior you have to behave equally with everybody. What does it really mean is that you know that there is spirit soul in everybody. Everybody is a soul. Tiger also has a soul. But it doesn't mean you act also same way in front of tiger and a Brahmana, because you know that tiger also is a living entity. There is a spirit soul inside the tiger also, but the tiger doesn't know. Tiger will pound on you, tiger will attack on you, because for tiger you are his food. So understanding, seeing everybody with equal vision means understanding that there is spirit soul in everybody. They are all part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Everybody has the potential to go back to the Supreme Lord. That is the equal vision, seeing everybody as spark of God. But again, we have to still act as per the social norms. We have to still act based on a particular body one has acquired, right? Not considering that, okay, everybody is spirit soul, so this body, this is external covering, it doesn't matter. Somebody may think, oh, I can go in outside or inside the girls hostel, women hostel, and do whatever I want. Ultimately everybody is same. One should have equal vision. Why to have differentiate between male and female and all that? No, one has to act intelligently as per the social norms. Equal vision means understanding that everybody is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Everybody has the potential to go back to Godhead. Everybody has the potential to engage in bhakti. So even the living entity who is in the form of a germ, a bacteria, a little ant, mosquito, even they are the spark of the Supreme Lord, and they can also progress to the higher grades of life. So the saintly person behaves in that particular way. So for example, Srila Prabhupada, once he was in New Jersey sitting in the park and chanting, and there was one female disciple, um, Govinda Mataji, Govinda Dasi, sitting close up, and she saw one slug close by, and she immediately kind of moved back, jumped back, seeing that ugly slug. And then Prabhupada saw what happened, and he saw that slug, that bug there. And Prabhupada said, please chant for this poor creature. Because he is also a spirit soul is there, and that also has the potential to progress further to the higher species of life and take to Krishna consciousness. So chant for this poor creature so he can also be released from this low creature form and attain to the higher form. Another pastime, Prabhupada was sitting in the room in LA, and there was Shrutakirti Prabhupada's secretary that time. He saw a small bug. Prabhupada saw a small bug in the room, and Prabhupada saw this bug was not moving for a long time. It was just staying at one place. And Prabhupada told his secretary, Shrutakirti Prabhu, please take a flower petal or something, remove this bug from here and keep him outside where he can get his nourishment. So not that, okay, we see the lower species of life and we just try to harass it or brush it aside, understanding that ultimately everybody is a spirit soul and everybody has the potential to go back to Godhead. Everybody has the potential to engage in bhakti. So in that way, seeing everybody with that vision, that is the right equal vision. Not that I have to behave equally with everybody, with every species of life. Okay, so very beautiful verse here. Everybody should try to memorize this verse. And we'll stop here today's discussion. If anybody has any questions, comments, then we are open for any discussion. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Yes, Gopal Prabhu.
Karta definition and explanation what you described works fine for humans, but how do you apply that to animal kingdom and devatas?
Okay, very good. So this definition of karta, all the instructions of the scriptures are meant for human beings, because human being is bound by the karma. The animals are not bound by karma. Animals are forced to act as per their instinct. Okay, so only the human form of life accumulates karma. In human form of life, we accumulate karma, and yes, we dissolve karma also, and we accumulate new karma also. But all other species of life, be it trees, dogs, animals, birds, insects, the aquatics, all these different species of life are just exhausting previous karma, not building new karma, because they are forced to act based on their nature, based on their instinct. Only the human being is given with higher intelligence to inquire. Athatoh Brahma Jigyasa.
Yeah, that's exactly what was my understanding.
Mhm.
But when you say that every soul has a potential to go back to Godhead,
Right.
whether it is a cobra or lion or something, but they are in exhaustive mode. They are not doing anything to improve.
Right. So the point here is everybody has the potential to go back to the Godhead, means by from this one particular life form which they have, somebody is in the form of an insect, an ant, or a worm, they can come to the human form of life. Okay, and based on the little sukriti somebody gets, then they can engage in Krishna consciousness, and then in that way they progress further to go back to Godhead. There are very rare examples that somebody from the animal form itself directly went back to Godhead. Of course, there are examples still in our scriptures, right? There is example of Gajendra in the form of a Gajendra elephant. He directly went back to Godhead. So he does not have to come back again in human form of life. Directly from the elephant form, exhausting that, he went back to Godhead. There is example Ramanujacharya, he feeds his Mahaprasad to some fishes, and those fishes, they acquire the four-handed Vishnu form and they are delivered. They go back to Godhead. So every living entity has the potential to go back to Godhead, either from that life form or at least they progress higher, right? From the lower life form, they come to the higher life form and they continue their journey towards the ultimate goal, getting liberated from this material bondage. Okay, does that clarify? Okay, thank you. Any other question, comment? And one thing I want to mention here. So Gopal Prabhu, Malti Mataji, they always keep their camera on. So I really like that. And I want to see everybody keeping their cameras on. You know why? Because when the cameras are on, then we can see each other. Otherwise, for me, it's all like black Brahman. I don't know who is on the other side, what they are doing. Are they really listening, or they are cooking or eating? Some tadka is going on, or whatever is going on. And you know what? In the very beginning, when this Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Lord Krishna personally, first time, that time also somebody listened through Zoom. Somebody listened through the this medium. What was that? Dhritarashtra. Right? Dhritarashtra also heard that, like Zoom Zoom session. And there was no transformation. Krishna heard, Arjuna heard in person, sitting next to Krishna, there was a transformation. And somebody listening through Black Brahman, there was no transformation. Even though Dhritarashtra heard that, but there was no transformation. So we should not stay in this Black Brahman, black box thing, and try to show your faces so we can see each other and feel the presence as if sitting together. Okay, that's why we write in the message, please keep your cameras on. Okay, just a comment here. So yes, any other comment, question? Okay, Rahul Prabhu, anything?
No,
Satish
Prabhuji,
Prabhu?
thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, if no other discussion point question, we can end it here. Please try to read these verses either ahead of time and read the purpose in detail. So the learning goes along with that, not just hearing, right? We should try to read and then read and listening, then introspect. In that way, then the learning matures. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada
Hare Krishna.
Ki Jai.
Jai.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. And you.
Hare Krishna.